Alright, welcome to our next video about the Recurve bow. Now in this video, I'm going to talk to you about the arrow rest on your bow. There are two types of arrow rests, and in those two types, there are two types of action for those arrow rests. You've got a stick-on arrow rest, that's type 1, and you have a bolt-on arrow rest, that's type 2. Now, the action is the way that the arrow rest is made, how it moves. And the first type is a simple moulded plastic or metal that doesn't move that much and simply holds the arrow in place. And the second type is a finger rest, which is a metal finger that flicks back and forward. Now, in terms of a stick-on arrow rest, these are very good for a basic beginner's bow. The more of the cheaper arrow rests are stick-on because they're nice and cheap to manufacture. They'll generally be made out of a moulded plastic, and as you get more expensive arrow rests, they start getting made out of metals, and at the higher end of a stick-on arrow rest, you start to find this finger action. The stick-on arrow rest should be stuck onto your bow so that the hole in the arrow rest aligns up with this hole in your bow, and that allows what's called a plunger button to be screwed down into your arrow rest. And in our bow tuning video we'll talk to you about what that actually does and what a plunger button does for your bow, so look out for that. In terms of the action of a stick-on arrow rest, this moulded plastic static arrow rest, all it does for your arrow is it just holds it in place very consistently. There are no main moving parts in this arrow rest, so it isn't very high maintenance, but the downfall of that is you can't tune that arrow rest. It's one shape, one size, and that's it. When it comes to the finger action of a stick-on arrow rest, it's more adjustable. You can move it out and you can move it in, depending on the size of your arrow or how far you want your arrow away from your bow on the arrow rest. These are more expensive, these finger action arrow rests, and they've got moving parts, so they are more high maintenance, and if you don't set them up properly they rattle, so you've got to make sure that you set it up properly, and in our bow tuning video we'll talk about that. The second type of arrow rest, the bolt-on arrow rest, it also has a static type and also a fingered type, but the static type isn't very common. So in this video we'll just talk to you about the finger type. A bolt-on arrow rest, and compared to a stick-on arrow rest, instead of being stuck to the face of your bow, it's bolted down onto the back, down on one of these holes. The other hole is left empty so that you can screw down your plunger button. Bolt-on arrow rests are more expensive and tend to be more adjustable, and the benefit of a bolt-on arrow rest is that everything is away from the arrow. There's nothing stuck to the face of the bow that could get in the way of the arrow. It's all pushed out behind your bow where it's bolted down. So that's a benefit of a bolt-on arrow rest. When it comes to the plunger button for your bow, they're all pretty much of a muchness. The only difference between a cheaper plunger button and a more expensive one is the action. And what I mean by that is how smooth that plunging action is. A cheaper arrow rest, that action won't be very smooth, which means the arrow's flight won't be all that smooth. A more expensive plunger button, that action will be much smoother, so you get a much smoother flight. Another thing that differs these two arrow plunger buttons is how easy they are to adjust. This one is easier to adjust and fine-tune than this one, and in our bow tuning video I'll talk to you about why that's very important. So just to recap, there are two different types of arrow rests. You've got your stick-on and your bolt-on, and you've got arrow rests that are static and ones that have fingers that move back and forward. In terms of these arrow rests, there's no actual benefit to having a bolt-on versus a stick-on arrow rest. They both have their pros and cons. It's just how high quality the arrow rest is how easy it is to adjust, and how high quality the manufacturing of it was. And you'll get that on both the bolt-on and on the stick-on arrow rests, and it just comes with how expensive your arrow rest is. Everything in archery is ordered on price. You know you've got a good piece of equipment if it costs a lot of money. You know you've got a bad piece of equipment if it doesn't cost a lot of money. So if you go into a shop looking for an arrow rest, price is always a good indication. If you want it to be easy and quick to set up, get a stick-on arrow rest. If you want it more adjustable, get a bolt-on arrow rest. When it comes down to the plunger button, the more expensive ones are for more experienced archers, the cheaper ones are for beginners. That's pretty much all there is to it. Now look out for our bow tuning video. In that video we'll talk to you about how all of these different parts work together and how you can adjust these to get the best performance out of your bow. So watch out for that.